Small business owners, entrepreneurs, medium startups, and VCs, this one's for you. Welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line, Balancing Evolution with Execution, hosted by Elevate Talent Solutions founder and CEO, Ron Miller. Through Ron's own hard-won wisdom, along with an array of luminaries across the entrepreneurial ecosystem, you'll glean priceless wisdom that will help you see past the day-to-day grind and into the future where you can check off today's to-do list and achieve innovation and elevation to ensure your business is future-proofed. Fulfilling and profitable, it's time for Beyond the Bottom Line, Balancing Evolution with Execution. Take it away, Ron.
All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Beyond the Bottom Line, Balancing Evolution with Execution. And if you've listened before, or maybe you're a new listener, this show is about a clear, no fluff, no nonsense, no bullshit look and talk about how to start, grow, and scale your business for long-term success. So today we're going to dig deeply into my favorite topic. And for those of you that know me, I am more than passionate about recruiting. And we've all seen over the past year and a half, obvious disconnect in recruiters and candidates and job posts and actual openings. Recruiting in 2024, it wasn't what it used to be. And I think we can all agree, if we're being honest, it's really kind of a good thing, right? It's been painful, but change is never comfortable. I think like Ted Lasso said it best. If you're riding the horse and you look comfortable doing it, you're probably not learning anything. Something along those lines. I love quoting Ted Lasso. Best show ever. But so go on really are the days of when you could just as a recruiter post a job description and hope for the best would just land in your lap with today's top talent. And today's candidates, they want more engagement. They want more personalization and more reasons to choose you over the competition. So the same old strategy just doesn't cut it anymore. And that's where creativity steps back into the recruiting process. And it's long since been lost out there in the recruiting world. So in this episode, we're going to explore and get back to how recruiters can break free from the mundane, reimagine their approach, and create hiring strategies that not only attract the right talent, but also build lasting connections. And it's time to transform recruiting from boring to brilliant, because the future of hiring really demands less. So today, I am really honored to bring you one of the most creative people I have talked to in quite some time, who has an amazing and strong background in talent acquisition. So I'm bringing you Kim Arin. Kim is the CEO and founder of Kim Arin Coaching, a coaching and consulting business focused on supporting teams and individuals develop the most creative ways. So Kim is also the former chief talent officer of a charter school network in New York City and was the executive director of staffing recruitment for the Newark Public School District. Kim is also an adjunct professor at Montclair State University, where she designed and teaches a class called Creative Thinking that has her students unpacking the creative process and applying what they've learned to their lives. And when she's not coaching or strategizing, you can really find her painting or writing, putting her creativity to the test. So Kim is passionate about looking at new and innovative approaches to solving old problems and completely rejects the phrase, that's the way it's always been done. For those who know me, how we've always done it is one of the bane of my existence. Her favorite phrase is, what if? So Kim, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you.
I am so excited to be here, Ron. It's such a pleasure.
You know, I have to say before we get started, Montclair State University, we went there when my daughter was looking 2 years ago at school. And I actually really liked the campus. I was surprised at the breadth of actually how big that is in there. It was a cool little school. It was really cool. I really liked it.
It's such a gorgeous campus. Every time I walk on campus, I'm like, how did people not know this exists? Right? It is such a beautiful, beautiful location. And my students are so awesome. It's great. I love working there.
It's really nestled into the community there too.
Yeah.
Like you don't really know it, like, cause you're driving by it because of where it sits, but you pull in and you're like, oh my God, like they laid this out beautifully. It's a really nice little campus. So for those of you in New Jersey, if you're looking for a school locally to go to that's pretty reputable, Montclair State could be the place for
Check
you.
it out. Yeah, I think we were
Look, they got a great.
I think it was just ranked above Rutgers, so it's really it's a fabulous school.
I'm not going to let my daughter listen to this episode then, because that's where she wound up going. So
Rutgers is also but it really is. It's such a beautiful little state school. It feels just very cozy and well planned, and the kids are awesome. So yeah, check it out. Check it out. Thanks for the plug.
Definitely. Absolutely. Look, and they got a great professor there, right? So if you're looking for creativity and really putting it to chess, check out Kim's class over there. I'm not sure. What is your class called?
It's called Creative Thinking. And it's a class that sort of surveys all content areas. It's a general studies class that's taught through the Department of Theater and Dance. So I get kids from all across the university. I have psych majors, I have TV and film majors, I have child development majors. And so we look at all humanities areas through the lens of creativity. It's fantastic.
It's great to get such a wide breadth of, different students from different backgrounds into those types of programs. And it kind of transitions into where you and I come from in recruiting, because recruiting is not a college level course. I am adamant that it should be. I would love to teach a class on recruiting somewhere. So I think it's important. I think it should be part of like a human resources curriculum, and it ties into creativity. Like, I've been trying to figure out how to pitch this to somebody for quite a while.
Well,
but in recruiting.
Yeah, we should really talk about this, because I think you are right. I'm finding that with my students, there are so many skills that I had to go out into the world and sort of learn on my own, recruiting absolutely being one of them. I was basically hired to run the recruiting department, having had maybe 3 days of recruiting experience in my entire life. So it was sort of a learn on the job, learn as you go, ask questions when you don't know. And it was an amazing way to learn. But I do think there is so much that is teachable, right? That you can front load and preload, so that once you get into the seat, once you're ready to go, you got at least a little bit of what you need to get things moving. Yeah.
And that's the funny thing about recruiting is there isn't a background that really doesn't fit it, because it's a people first, front faced orienting role. And you need to be able to connect and really kind of connect with individuals where they're at, right? You lead with empathy, 2 ears, 1 mouth, and you not just understanding the roles you're trying to fill, but the people that you're trying to match with it, and you get so many people that are successful recruiters that come from so many different walks of life. But that one common thread in the successful ones, I always felt, is they're creative and they are people first oriented.
Yeah. Right. They want to build relationships. They want to be with other people. They're curious.
Yeah.
Right. The thing that got me, I think, the furthest in life.
Yeah.
But certainly in getting new candidates to come into organizations where I was recruiting them, was to just be curious about them. Right. Like, tell me everything about you so that I can better understand whether or not you're going to be successful in this role. Right. That's the job of a great recruit.
Absolutely. It's about the match. It can't be about what we need to fill, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can't be about what we need, because we have nothing to do with it. It's the customer, what their culture kind of dictates, and then understanding that candidate and what really matters to them in making that right match. It helps eliminate job shock. It puts them in a position where they feel they can be successful and add value. And I think that's becoming even more important as the world of work changes and the workforce changes.
100%. And what employee needs are now, right? When I graduated from college, it was the early 2000s, and nobody cared about what I needed as a 21-year-old sort of in the world. They're like, we're going to pay you money. That's what you get from doing this job, right? But
Yep.
today, the new generation of workforce employee, it's a totally different mindset. There is a totally different landscape. And organizations actually are responsible for way more than they were before in terms of employee psychological safety, emotional health and well being, belonging. Like these are all of the ingredients of what keeps people at their job and keeps people happy and productive and successful. And so the recruiters need to be able to really understand how their organization does that and then be able to translate that back out to the world of candidates.
And
The different
I think,
world.
yeah, if you think back, I felt over the last few years, for me, when I was still in the field leading recruiting teams and then leading recruiting nationally for organizations, recruiting was on a very different trajectory pre-pandemic. I
Yeah.
felt like we were getting back to the grassroots portion of it, meeting people where they were, not them meeting us where we were, and starting to get creativity back into it. And then the pandemic happened and everything
Yeah.
changed overnight. And you had to adjust, that was just the reality. Nobody really knew what was going to be the outcome of it, how long it was going to last. And depending where you were in the US, it affected everybody differently. I mean, I know where I was at the time, my company had a hard time understanding what we were going through in the Northeast,
Mhm.
how that shutdown happened immediately. They'd never heard of COVID inspectors. I mean, we
Right.
literally, if you remember this, like we had people walking around looking in building windows to make sure that people weren't in there working.
Yeah. Yeah. It's right. I think it's so interesting because I have a few friends who work for major corporations that changed their work from home policy during COVID, right? You were allowed to do 5 days a week at home. You weren't required to come into the office. Then there was a slow shift back to the office. Now they're saying 5 days a week in the office. And what happened, which would naturally happen if you changed your work from home policies, is people relocated, people moved. So, literally, we've seen these geographical shifts, we've seen these sort of cultural shifts. People have organized their lives around working from home or only being in the office 2 days a week. And now organizations are sort of like, nope, we're going back to a different way of being and doing. And what I'm seeing is that their recruitment strategy is not necessarily aligning with the new context that they're creating for their employees. So there's a way in which organizations are still going really fast, right? Everyone's just like numbers, 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 numbers. Fill those pipelines, get those candidates in. Let's get those numbers. Then let's run it through an algorithm and look for keywords. And then who do we have left over, right? And that is, first of all, it feels terrible to be a number in a
Yeah.
pipeline. It feels awful to just be
Yeah.
a name or even an anonymous resume in a pipeline. From a candidate experience, it's terrible. It feels hopeless. It feels lonely. And so that's your first introduction to your place of work, right? So there's a way in which we've been going so fast, we've been optimizing, we've been maximizing, but we haven't sort of gotten back to what you're describing, Ron, which is like, who's the human that expressed interest in this role? Who wants to work here? Who maybe wants to have a career here? Maybe there's a 10-year employee in here. But like, are we looking at that anymore? Has the workforce shifted so much that we've gotten so far away from that people first approach to recruiting that we're actually like doing ourselves and our organizations harm? I don't know. I think time will tell, but I am certainly seeing those seismic shifts in how organizations are managing their people processes. And I'll be really curious to know sort of what happens. One thing we
Yeah.
do know, however, is that the gig economy has become huge. right? Over the last 5
Yeah.
years, we've seen more and more people hang up their own shingle. And I think
Yeah.
part of that is because they're like, I don't want to deal with that nonsense. I don't
Yeah.
have to. And so, how are we accommodating our organizational needs given that people don't want to do the game that they're playing anymore? I think it's all really interesting to think about. And the work that I do is help organizations take a look at, like, who are you really? What are your needs really? And now, what's the most creative way for us to find the right people to join your organization? Let's not be full of shit about who we are and full of shit about what we need. Let's
Yeah.
actually be honest and then tell people, honestly, this is what you're going to get.
Yeah. Listen, I agree. I love it, because for me, like I've talked about it in prior episodes, and this has just been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. If you're going to have a mission, vision, value, and it's just words on a wall that really are meaningless, then who are you? I have more respect for an organization that says, coming here, we are going to work you to death. You will not get
Mhm.
many holidays off, and we have a high turnover.
Yep.
Perfect. Just if that's who you
Great.
are, be who you are.
Yeah, now I can make an informed decision and none of us will be disappointed, right? You're not going to be disappointed in me
Yes.
not meeting some hidden agenda that you have buried under the iceberg,
Yeah.
right? That's below the surface.
Bingo.
And
Yes.
I'm not going to be disappointed with you because you've come out and said, this is who we are and this is what we do and this is what you can expect from us. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm totally
And
with you. I think,
organizations, they have a
yeah.
hard time being honest about that because they like to get so wrapped up, and you get that disconnect as they grow, especially of what the C-level suite thinks and understands versus what has been created in the field and the field leadership that deliver that message. And it becomes robotic, it becomes numbers driven only, and it becomes quickish.
Yeah,
And there's no
definitely.
room for creativity in there or a voice or a seat at the table.
Yeah, I think, look, there are some organizations that are just so big and siloed, and it's, they really would have to want to change their culture.
Yeah.
But I do think for the organizations that are, like 200 people, maybe even 500 people or less, there are, and, even in the thousands, depending on, what the executive structures look like. There are ways to get very real about who you are, what you do, how you do it, and lead with that, right? And, good, bad, ugly, put your cards on the table and the right people will join you. But I there
Yeah.
is sort of, and Ron, I don't know if you've experienced this as well, but sort of this deficit thinking, like there isn't enough talent out there. That is death to a recruiter.
Yeah.
There isn't enough talent out there means you're hiring whoever you can get. And then you're bringing them in and onboarding them. And 3 weeks later, you're like, oh, we've made a terrible, expensive mistake, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, that's a result of this deficit thinking. And oftentimes, it's a result of organizations not being clear, right?
Yeah.
Not being totally clear with themselves and with the candidate about what they need and want.
Yeah.
So it's a hard and painful exercise to go through that sort of honesty survey to say, like, who are we really? Like, what are we putting in here that's aspirational, and what are we putting in this job description that is factual and reliable? That can be a really painful exercise, and it will pay dividends in the end to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I could not agree more with what you're saying. And, for me, we peel it back a little bit further, and let's go back to kind of what you were saying, we were talking about earlier with when we went through the pandemic and everybody converted to this virtual model for whatever period of time, we all quickly needed to find faster ways to get to candidates that were remote. And
Yep.
technology came into play. And technology stayed. And now we're in the AI evolution of it. And listen, I am not one that's going to put my head in the sand and say AI is not here to stay. It is. It is going to have an impact, but it's only as good as the people behind it. It's only as good as when you understand what it's used for. And
Yeah.
right now, I believe it has dumbed down the level of, especially in talent acquisition, the level of the recruiter. I'm not saying by any means that recruiters are not smart people. What I am saying is their ability to build the relationship originally from moment one is now eliminated. And they are getting only the candidates that are matching the algorithm. And I've talked about this at great length. And somebody that has designed a couple of these systems, implemented a couple of these systems, if you don't have the right training and you don't understand the tool, you are not matching to the right keywords to get to the right candidates. So when you look at even what's going on in white collar, because I personally believe we're in a white collar recession. We've been for over a year. You can see it in the numbers. We're not at 3% unemployment. We're at like 23% unemployment in the white collar realm. And to your point, there isn't a lack of talent available out there. There is a lack of connecting to that talent in a proactive manner that you're being, what's the word that I'm looking for? You have intent in how you're connecting to it.
Right.
So the tool is standing in the way. It's taking away the creativity of the recruiter. And the recruiter, people get on me for saying this. There is a difference for me with a recruiter and someone that works in talent acquisition. And it's right in the title, because if you work in talent acquisition, you acquire talent. Recruiters find talent.
Right.
To acquisition, and there's no creativity in that.
Right. It's all about numbers. It's all about hitting metrics. And look, I'm a believer in goals. I usually set goals that are impossible to meet, right? Because it gives me something to strive for, but it's not the measure of whether or not I've done a good job. I actually think retention is the measure of whether or not you've done a good job in your recruiting. So that's when I take a look at like, oh, how did we do this year? Well, we have X number of people moving on to promoted positions. We have X number of people staying, signing on. Those are the ways that I take a look at how is my recruiting doing. And it's a slower burn, but it's a worthwhile focus and lens to take, right? So I totally agree with you.
Yes.
I think what's really interesting, and this kind of goes back to that training, Ron, like I didn't know how to recruit when I started. I was literally like, here's your desk, here's your computer. We need to hire 3,000 teachers. Good luck. So that was my introduction to recruiting.
Are you ready? Here's an interview.
Oh, make it happen. Oh, and by the way, there's a teacher crisis in the United States. You won't be able to find anyone who's actually certified to do it. So like, what do you do with that? The only thing that you can do with that is alchemize, create magic. You can't look at a problem that size and that scale and that level of importance. I mean, I believe that teachers are the most important people in the world. Okay, and this is where I start to cry in the middle of the podcast. So teachers are the most important people in the world. I'm hiring the most important person in the world to some third grader in Newark, New Jersey. Like that really matters. So I can't just take anyone. How can you possibly do that to a child, right?
Yeah.
So what you do is you make that job the best job anybody in the world could possibly ever have, right? You make that the most magical, exciting experience for a person who wants to make an impact on the life of a child. And I'm only using that as an example for how to create that magic, right? Recruiters have to. It is their obligation to make these jobs magical. And how do you do that? Right? How do you do that when numbers and algorithms and computers and robots are sort of in the way? And I think what you're saying, Ron, is like, no, it's people. It's finding the people.
Yeah.
It's making the connections. It's calling somebody on the phone and saying, I just saw your resume and it's awesome. I want to talk to you. Let's go have coffee or a virtual coffee, right? Or can I invite you to the office to take a little tour? Or have you seen this promotional video we just put together? I'm really excited about it. I think it does a great job explaining who we are and what we do. Take a look, right? It's reaching across that computer screen and saying, like, I know you are a complete whole human that I want to learn more about, and I want you to learn more about me too. And by the way,
Yeah.
that's not that creative. That's human. That's person to person, right? That's something that we
Now you're
have
just talking nonsense, Professor.
I know, I know. That's like, we've gotten so far away from just being like, hey, human being, telephone, right? Hi, person. My kids, when I call someone on the phone, they're like, what are you doing? You're embarrassing me. Because they are all Instagram, Snapchat, FaceTime, DM. Like there is nothing about going to have coffee with a friend that even like feels natural or intuitive anymore.
Yeah.
But that's how business gets done still. Even in the boardrooms, right? Like, even though we've put computers in between all of these different layers of authority, the fact of the matter is people are still going out for drinks and doing deals. Like, that's how the work gets done.
Yeah. Well, it's where, you get the work done with the candidates too, when you're identifying your candidates that fill your bench, right? I could talk all day about reactive versus proactive recruiting and how to get away from those numbers. Cause to your point, like when I do advanced recruiting classes, my first question to recruiters is, what's your goal?
Right.
50 interviews a week. And my next question is, why?
Right.
And the most popular answer is, well, that's the target.
Right.
But why is that the target?
Yeah.
What is that netting you?
What if you took that 50 number, you brought it down to 10, and you took 10 people out for coffee and you qualified 6 of them for the next round, right? Isn't that time better spent than doing like
You would
screen?
think.
Yeah, you would think, but somehow we've gotten into this business of numbers and checking boxes that don't really make sense.
Yeah. And it's really gotten, my opinion is it's really gotten out of control where, when you start to think on who makes up the marketplace today, regardless of if you're recruiting teachers, you're recruiting warehouse workers, you're recruiting drivers, you're recruiting IT or tech people, which listen, there are plenty of very bright, capable people here capable of filling those jobs.
Sure.
We're not going to get off a tangent here, but my point is within that market space, the creativity now for me is more important than ever because you have 5 different generations of people, soon to be 6, because let's be honest, baby boomers that are unretiring and coming back into the workforce. You have now, what's this new generation that's coming in, the super beta or beta or
beta?
I don't even know.
I have a beta and Gen Z in my house, Ron. It is Sigma, Skibbity Toilet, no cap, hard.
But how you communicate with those 2 different ones are probably 2 different ways. And as a recruiter, if you don't embrace that and understand it and get creative with your outreach, creative with your connecting, you're going to miss huge swaths of people.
Totally.
And that's just looking at like an age or demographic landscape from a year perspective. I don't even want to get into the DE&I perspective of this as well, because this seems to be like a dirty word at this point. 3 dirty letters, the 3 dirtiest letters in recruiting right now are in business of DEI. Blows my mind, unless you're getting off of a Zeppelin, to travel into work today, or I'm sorry. I just think it's antiquated.
Well,
I really do.
Here's what I believe about DEI. And actually, I've started to use the full expression of it, which is DEIB, belonging, right? I was a band-aid to an enormous issue in our country. And people are undertrained around what it means, what their responsibility is in it, what their own biases and, beliefs are. And so until people are ready to do that work, like really, truly ready to take a look at themselves, and, I'll say really specifically, until white people are ready to do that work and take a look at what their responsibility is in creating environments that are diverse, equitable, inclusive, and allow for everyone to belong and have a place, it's not going to be solved. So I actually understand why it feels really hard right now. It feels really hard because no one really, well, I don't want to say no one, not everyone who is on the front lines of recruiting gets it, understands why it's important, understands what it is, their responsibility is in it. And I believe it's organizations' responsibility to provide their frontline people that training and to build a culture that helps those latent learners along to understand what their role is within the greater organization, what their responsibility is to their colleagues in that way. So
Yeah.
it is a dirty word, and that's a damn shame. It really is. It's putting a
Yeah.
lot of people at risk and a lot of people at harm, and also harming organizations who don't understand it. They made a
Yeah.
major investment in these efforts and they are not rolling out what they've promised. That
Yeah.
is that is hard. That hard
Yeah.
truth. And it's also something that when you are doing your creative recruiting, you need to get like really honest with yourself about where are we in this spectrum, in this continuum? Where are we in our own development around this?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it goes to that belonging, right? And that takes so many different shapes and forms in how individuals from different walks of life feel like they belong in their role, belong with their peer group, and belong in their organization.
Yeah.
And when you have that loss of creativity, it has a huge impact on that belonging. I mean, we're already coming out of that isolationist era of the pandemic, right? I hate going back to that, but it was a catalyst of how things really changed. And
Mhm.
in this new virtual world of work, we've proved that we can not just make it work, but it's healthier. I'm I will just continue to say that it's a healthier lifestyle. Whether
Yeah.
organizations choose to follow that is their opinion, but
Yep.
you have an opportunity here to apply creativity to the belonging portion of things.
Yes. Yes. I think so. It's really interesting. I have a client that I do some consulting for around their people management, and they are an entirely virtual organization. They're international, so they have people around the world. And during the holidays for gifts this year, they sent everyone nachos in a can and they had a virtual nacho party. So, like, there are ways to create, and look, does a nacho party create our national DEI
Yeah.
problem? No. However, it's just a really creative way to say, like, everyone, let's have some fun together. Let's have a good time.
Yeah.
There is no, like, there's no risk here, right? Everybody get on
Yeah.
screen, eat your nachos. We'll all have sour cream and guacamole all over our faces and hands and just like be together. And I thought that was such a great way to bring everyone together, but it requires thought. It requires
Yeah.
planning. It requires the interest in doing it. Like that has to matter
Yeah.
in order for that to happen. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, Ron, I agree with you. Like that belonging is going to become so much more important. And when we think about it as recruiters, my first step, and this is always sort of my process when I think about like, oh, what do other people need? I always think about what I would like, right? And what I would like isn't what everybody would, not everybody. the same things I like. Not everybody likes what you like, but I always start with myself and I say, like, what would I like in this experience? And so, I would ask myself as a recruiter, like, how do I belong here? Right? What does my version of belonging look like at this organization? And then I would lead with that. That's something that's really important to the organization, that everybody belongs. I would talk about my every recruiter needs to get really comfortable with talking about their own experience organization in a truthful, honest, compelling way that's going to help the candidate basically take a mirror and say, oh, can I see myself there? Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I were leading a team of recruiters right now, the first thing I would have them do is write their bio of like their experience at X organization. What has it been like to be an employee here? What would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of? What's been the most exciting thing, right? Ask them those probing questions, get them to really develop a full narrative of who they are at this organization so that they can give it away every single time they talk to a candidate.
That I absolutely love that. And something I would add to that, and I think this is important too, is not just their experience there, but what are their opportunities that they see for their growth and to open up into new areas of work that challenge them?
I love that. Yeah. Like, where do you see yourself growing here? Right.
Yeah.
Because you're right.
Yeah.
Opportunity is such an important part of why somebody would join an organization. Right. There's nothing worse than
Yeah.
feeling like you're stuck and you can't
Yeah.
grow and there's nowhere to accelerate. So, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Love
I
that.
can't take credit for that, Kim. That's something I wrote down that you and I talked about in our preliminary conversation, and I had an opportunity to use it.
I'm so glad you did. Because, training as much as I'm passionate about who we bring in into an organization, you also have to invest in them. You have to grow them. Nobody's fully baked on the first day, right? Like no one knows exactly how to do their job that first day on the job. So investing in that training and development continuously, like throughout their career, is
Yeah.
really where a lot of my passion lies. And it's something that I spend a lot of time in my executive coaching is working with those more senior leaders who are transitioning into leading teams or, you know, have already had the experience of leading teams and want to have even more impact. That to me is actually the ball game. I've seen so many times those individual contributors just getting plopped into leadership and management roles and feeling like, oh my gosh, they took the thing I loved doing away from me. I was too good at it. And now I don't get to do it anymore. And I just have to get other people to do it. And so a lot of my work in that context is to help those leaders then see actually the beautiful art of leading and managing and being that mentor and coach to the folks who are who they were, 5, 10 years ago. Personal
Yeah.
development piece is so critical.
Well, and that's key. And from your experience with what you do,
Mhm.
where do you see it really become intentional that that process needs to start?
The process of developing and training people to become leaders. I mean,
Yeah.
ideally, day one, the first, my belief is everyone's a leader. You have the opportunity. I have been the lowest rung on the totem and I've raised my hands in meetings and put an idea out there that no one else had because I was closest to the work. Everyone has the opportunity to lead from where they sit, and every voice, and this is again belonging, right? Every voice matters. And if you can build organizations that actually are aligned and believe that that's true, and we create communities of listeners and responders, everyone has an opportunity to lead from every seat that they sit within. You just have to be brave. You have to be willing to raise your hand and say, I have an idea, right? So number one, like that is a cultural piece that organizations have to commit to. I think from a training and development perspective, we're always looking at, okay, who's next, right? Like who's when XYZ leaves, who are we bringing in? Who are we training up? And so the best plans start early and before it's necessary and before it's needed. And so another service that I offer is running leadership cohorts for those next gen leaders who aren't necessarily getting promoted or even in line for a promotion yet, but you start to build out that leadership thinking. You give them capstone projects to execute so they can actually flex those muscles in a safe environment and then move into those leadership roles, which ultimately, again, that's your best retention plan, right? Hire from within, recruit for those new openings, get that internal pipeline. Uh, that's where you end up saving money, time, and effort on training. So, yeah.
And people as a whole. And they
Mhm.
have goals then in order to open up those new areas of work and opportunity for themselves and still feel like they have an impact on the people coming in behind them, because what's coming in behind them are people that you proactively recruited that
Mm.
also align with the vision and the values and are coming in with a feeling of belonging from day one because they feel like they've connected with that opportunity. And when you
Yes.
build that core of the organization that way, you suddenly, I feel like you get out of that rut that a lot of companies and leadership teams find themselves in. But if I bring in someone to start teaching them to do my job, I become expendable, which
Mhm.
is not far fetched in today's corporate environment, because
Mhm.
we've seen people with 20 years at a company walk in on a Friday and say, oh, by the way, via email, today was your last day. Thanks for everything you did.
Mhm.
Your computer's off and it's like they never existed.
Right.
And I don't
Right.
know if that sends the right message, and in the meantime, it feeds that narrative then of, well, I've been working with this individual. Now they're just replacing me with somebody cheaper,
Right.
somebody younger, somebody more apt to say yes. And
Yeah.
what message does that send everybody left behind about the belonging in the organization? You feel like another Cogsley cog or Spacely sprocket. So
Yeah.
I'm throwing my
It,
Gen X out there now.
yeah. I mean, but it's perfect, right? Like, no one wants to feel like a cog in the wheel. Everyone, and this is true. So I always tell people I work with people in a life coaching capacity, and oftentimes what will come up is they're afraid to ask for help, right? Like that's a human common fear. Like I'm afraid to say I need help here. And what I often will say to a client who brings that up is like, if you were asked to help, what would you do? And they'd be like, of course, I'd drop everything and help, right? Like there is a no one wants to feel like they don't matter. Everyone wants to have meaning and purpose in their lives. Everyone wants to feel useful. So, yeah, if you're doing this churn and burn thing with your employees and you're just looking at that bottom line and saying like, "Oh, we're going to eliminate this position and bring in a more junior person," and you're not investing in any training and development for people who are really talented and have been very loyal to you, you are not doing a service to yourself. Ultimately, that will catch up with you. The younger workforce is not interested in being a cog. They all believe that they are going to become TikTok celebrities. So just know that if that's your plan, going to be short lived. It's going to be short lived.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and a lot of them want to embrace that creativity. They want that individuality and their personality and what they feel their communication is to come through. And I think that creativity point and understanding it is going to become even more important over the next 5 to 10 years because that
Oh my,
workforce is taking over.
Absolutely. When you look at those pyramid of employee needs, at the top of the pyramid is autonomy, right? Like that's when folks sing, when they know that they have a locus of control. They know what their locus of control is. They know where they can flex. They know that they can flex. That's when you have employees for life. When you think that micromanagement and that numbers alignment and micromanagement and all those matrices that make you go crazy, that completely strip employees of their humanity, like that's when people leave. But if you're able to
Yeah.
say, oh, you're running this really cool recruiting program, you're bringing really interesting candidates in the door, keep going, test that out, you're doing great, right? Like rewarding the folks on your team who are flexing a little bit, it will serve the whole organization really well.
Yeah. And if you're letting them do it in creatively new ways, they're
Yes.
going to be passionate about what their next day looks like, other than, all right, well, I'm going to come into my desk and the AI tool is going to tell me, here's my 15 interviews for this morning. I'm just going to knock
Right.
them out, put in my notes, and the next 15 are up. That's not recruiting. That's talent acquisition.
It def
I digress. So
it definitely is. And look, I got a text message from Timu this morning saying that I am a perfect candidate for their data entry and I can earn up to $500 a day. Like, look, if you want to be that data entry person so that you can write your novels, so that you can paint,
yeah,
so that you can whatever, great, do it. But I don't think that that is what inspired organizations want. Inspired organizations want creative people to come and do this innovative work to get the most dedicated, most engaged employees in the door so that they can retain them and grow them and train them.
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. All right. So I'm going to put you on the spot to close this up because I could talk to you
Okay.
for probably 6 hours on tape, and people will have to turn this into a mini series and sell it on Netflix.
Great.
But
Let's
people will
do
buy it. So I think
it.
some people will buy it.
Oh my
So,
God, I love
but
it.
what do you, crossing from all your experience in talent acquisition, leading teams, and your coaching, for life coaching and for business coaching and leadership, if you put that all together and you tie it back to creativity, what is something that you love to teach and you think is the most important lesson today that you teach young people at Montclair State University in your creativity
Oh.
class, creative thinking?
Mm,
What is the one thing that you feel is the most important takeaway?
mm. So it's so funny that you ask this because I've been thinking a lot about this as I closed out the last semester and starting the new one. It's to have an opinion. The most important thing that we talked about this semester was to care about something. I don't care what it is. Have an opinion, have a point of view. Know when I ask you, because I would ask my students often, like, what do you think? I'd show them a work of art or I'd show them a new concept or idea and be like, what do you think? And I'd be met with silence. And one day I lost it a little bit and I was like, it actually matters if you care. Like, it actually, like, this, you're all going to fail if you don't tell me what you think. This is not a trick question. There is not a right or wrong answer. Just have an opinion, have a point of view. And so I think that that is actually the most important thing.
I love it.
And
I
I
absolutely
wake up
love it.
every day wrestling with that. Yeah.
I know. I feel like, listen, I'm not looking for a college degree, but I almost feel like as an adult, I may have to register down there. So,
I would love it. I'm starting to think about ways to offer it more globally. And actually, I do believe, even though I do this sort of as an academic and also I run creative workshops outside of corporate, I also run creative workshops inside of corporate. I run a collage course where executives sort of give expression to the type of leader they want to be through collage, and then they share it with their teams and sort of go deeper on who they want to be and how they want to show up. And they
well, I
do it
like
in this
that.
sort unique way. And so I am thinking about ways to bring this coursework to the workforce, because I do believe there is a way in which we're continuing to solve the same old problems the same old way. And we're just saying, like, we're going to do it, but this time with a computer or with an algorithm or with AI or, whatever it is. And I actually think there's even another way. There's even another way. And it does come back to caring, and it does come back to communicating effectively and sort of doing things the old way in some ways. So all of that to say is I will let you know when you have a chance to register.
I love that. I will absolutely love that. So in the meantime, though, Kim, for our listeners, how do people find you? Where can they find you, your business? Where can they link up with you?
So the best way to reach me is through my website, kimArincoaching.com, and it's Arin, A-R-I-N. So kimArincoaching.com. And you can schedule a 30-minute discovery call with me, and we can talk for 30 minutes. I give you a free consultation. Oftentimes that includes coaching based on a challenge that you bring to me, or if you know exactly how you want to work with me, we can have a conversation in that way. And I would love to hear from your listeners. I would love to hear what folks are grappling with.
I love that. And thank you for sharing it, folks. We will get all of Kim's contact information, her business information into the notes section. So whatever platform you're listening on, you'll be able to connect with her directly. And please, when the episode posts out there for you, any questions that you have, we'd love to be able to have enough questions to have a real listener mailbox that we can have Kim back on to answer those, where she can answer those online. And I would love to have Kim back on again as a guest and tackle a couple more topics. I think your insight and your energy is just contagious. So thank you so much, Kim, for coming on and having this really important discussion, especially as the first guest for us for 2025, as we kind of enter this realm of Happy New Year. We're going to tackle these topics in a real way, that these voices do not get lost in the calamity and the shuffle of a new year and things changing so rapidly and nobody really knowing the direction things. The basis of what we want to build as a business and as individuals, I think now is more important than it's ever been before. And having that ability to connect and be creative and be you can't get lost out there. So Kim, thank you so much again for coming on. And everybody, before I let you go, again, thank you for not only joining us again on this journey and listening and making sure you hit the like and follow button there down at the bottom of any platform that you're listening to us on, but really understanding that I'm passionate about helping people who invest in their life savings and starting a business, as well as organizations that are really looking to scale their business and operations the right way. And I'm going to continue bringing you different perspectives, not only from my 30 years of experience, but from some of the best thought leaders in the marketplace out there. And this is why I was so excited to bring somebody with Kim's background and value onto the show today, for you to hear her and be able to connect with another valued resource that can have a positive impact on you, your people, and your business. So make sure to check out our business website at www.elevate-talent-solutions.com for our blogs, links for all of our free info, our free business evaluation. And again, if you haven't done it already, hit that like or follow button at the bottom so you don't miss the next great episode of Beyond the Bottom Line. And if you have any questions for Kim or myself, feel free to drop them in the comments or email us at info@elevatetalentsolutions.net. Till next time, keep building.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Bottom Line. Do you have questions for Ron or today's guest about this episode? Reach out and your question might be featured on next week's mailbag. You can learn more about Ron and Elevate Talent Solutions at elevate-talent-solutions.com or on LinkedIn. This podcast was edited and produced in partnership with Adrian Rishart, principal of boutique marketing firm ACR Ventures. Check her out at acrventures.com for all your small business marketing needs. Be sure to hit that follow button and send us love letters and episode ideas to Ron Miller at elevatetalentsolutions.net. Tune in next week, and thanks for listening.